Hey, everybody. Welcome to Tral Tidbits of Volquest.com recruiting mini podcast. I'm Eric Kane alongside Matt Ray. Matt, we got a couple of names we're going to look through here, primarily focusing on the 2026 class as we are less than a month away from signing day. You got this weekend where you can host official visits, but it is the last weekend that you can host unofficial visits. Tennessee at the Swamp next weekend. And then, of course, coming back here for Vanderbilt, but you can host OVs that weekend, but not unofficials due to the NCAA sanctions bestowed on this program. So, big weekend coming up, focus of the 2026 class. But before we get to this weekend and some of those names out there, Tennessee did have a decommit from the class this week, and that was four-star athlete Legend Bay. I like Legend. I like his makeup. I think he can be a good football player. I was always kind of intrigued to see, like, they wanted him just for wide receiver, and you already kind of have different players, but you already have, like, a Tyreek King slot-type guy, and I think Tyreek King's going to be really good. I didn't want him to decommit, don't get me wrong, but I always thought that one was kind of interesting. That was always a risk, in my opinion. Would you differ from that phrasing?
No, I wouldn't differ because I would say that anytime you're recruiting a kid out of Texas and you're any program for that matter, it's a tough area to go in there. It's pretty unpredictable. He's a guy that chose Tennessee over Texas A&M. A lot of back and forth at the time of that decision. He's a guy that I think is very interesting, even from the early stages of his recruitment. Like after Tennessee went out and saw him in the spring and chose to pursue there relatively hard to land his commitment. He was being recruited as a quarterback by Duke and West Virginia at the time. Tennessee coming to play at receiver. They had a couple of other receivers on campus. They were looking from a numbers standpoint to add another one to the class, and obviously they were always going to hold a spot for Tristan Keys. Legend Bay jumped at that opportunity, but he's interesting. He's a guy now that's been recruited as a quarterback, a running back, and a wide receiver. I think for Tennessee, the one thing that he offered you is that fourth wide receiver type guy in this class was some flexibility. Like maybe you could eventually move him around if you needed to. But I think when you're talking about the slot position, he's a guy that is a very natural athlete. He's playing quarterback at the high school level, though. And when you're talking about coming into the same class as a very polished guy like Tyreek King or a really polished route runner, I'm not sure that I always saw that lining up, from a number standpoint, even long-term, if you were able to get him here. So an interesting guy that Tennessee obviously wanted to keep in the class. They quickly went back out and got on the road to see him after that official visit to Ohio State. But once he took that visit to Ohio State, it felt like, that the momentum, shifted once Tennessee wasn't able to kill that visit, and Ohio State's on a recruiting heater right now as they're closing out with a number of flips here in November and October and November. But Legend Bay now not a part of the class, and I wouldn't expect to see Tennessee go look to add another body at wide receiver in this 2026 class. I think they're done there, and I think they're very content with what they have in Celeste Moa, Tristan Keys, and Tyreek King. Three guys right there that are inside the top 75 of overall nationally, I believe.
Kelsey Pope's done a hell of a job recruiting. He really has. And the on-the-field production this year as well. Pope's having a good year. Tennessee now at 23 commits, 9th, still top 10 in the country, 9th and number 5 in SEC after the decommit of Legend Bay. All right, some of those 2026 guys that are still out there on the board. And the decommit from Legend Bay, like you said, doesn't mean Tennessee's going to go get a wide receiver, but maybe it opens the door for Tennessee to go attack the edge, maybe running back. Of course, some names we've been talking about. We'll look at the edge. A recent Texas A&M decommit who was on campus a couple of weeks ago, going to OV this weekend, and that is Jordan Carter.
Yeah, this one's an interesting one, right? I mean, Jordan Carter has continued to have dialogue with Tennessee for a while, as we talked about on the show following his visit to Knoxville for the Oklahoma game. He decommitted from Texas A&M that morning. And he's continued to keep his options open since. Tennessee's very much in play for him. He's a guy that does a lot of things really well, can stand up off the edge. I think over time he's got the frame to put his hand in the dirt and play multiple roles at the school of his choosing, but a guy that's really, really dynamic as a pass rusher for his size and really gets after the quarterback. But he's hearing from a lot of programs since decommitting from Texas A&M. This is one that's wide open. He's visited Georgia Tech before he decommitted from A&M. He visited Tennessee shortly after. He had already visited Auburn. We'll see how much Auburn stays in this thing. Texas also involved. Now, DJ Durkin obviously still in place. That defensive staff still in place at Auburn. So they're going to continue to recruit guys until the end or whatever happens for them. So, they're a team to somewhat watch. Georgia Tech's a team that in the state of Georgia where Jordan Carter is, they're making big plays for in-state kids that they want, and Jordan Carter's one of those guys. They want him, and they're trying to make a run as Brent Key continues to develop his program there and continues to receive support as he's had a really good season at Georgia Tech. So this is an interesting battle. Tennessee will have him here on an official visit this weekend, and when I talked to him earlier in the month, he told me then that the big thing for this visit will just be learning more about the program, learning more about the fit, getting that full experience of being around the coaching staff. Again, he got, a good bit of that during the Oklahoma game, but he'll have an opportunity this weekend coming in on what should be a relatively quieter weekend in terms of recruiting to ask and get questions answered and see more of the ins and outs of things as to how it pertains at Rocky Top. So this is a big visit weekend for Jordan Carter.
Jordan Carter, 6'3", about 250. Rivals industry ranking 154 in the country, and it was high as 57 and 119 in some other places you look. But Jordan Carter, certainly anywhere you look, a really dynamic player that a lot of these P4 programs trying to add here in the last month before signing day. All right, another recent decommit, or this one goes back a couple months or whatever, but not for Tennessee. Dre Quinn, another edge player, good, talented guy. A lot of dialogue there between Tennessee and Dre Quinn. What's the latest with Quinn and the Vols? We're about 3 weeks out.
Yep, so this is one of those, again, where Dre Quinn has an official visit set up for later in the month at Vanderbilt weekend. He has an official visit, I want to say, this weekend as well, and an unofficial visit at some point in the month to Texas. So he is a guy that's continuing to hear from a number of programs, continuing to hear from Ohio State, continuing to hear from Texas, continuing to hear from Tennessee. Tennessee coaches were out on the road on the bye week. Coach Chop down in Georgia to check in on him. Tennessee making it known to him that he's a priority. He's a guy that for the Vols, they had a good relationship with in the winter and in the spring. So this is a recruitment that, as far as that comfort piece, he's known Tennessee staff for a while. He's got plenty of face time with them. He's had a good relationship with Josh Heupel. At one point back in the winter, I felt like kind of in the earlier stages of this recruitment leading into spring visits and summertime official visits, I thought that maybe Dre Quinn's best relationship in the recruiting process overall was with Josh Heupel. It just seemed like those two had really hit it off with the visit last fall and then a visit in the winter where they got to spend a good bit of time together. He really enjoys the competitive side of Josh Heupel. He's really continued to connect with Lavorne Harbin, Coach Chop. So this is another interesting recruitment, a guy that's at Buford High School now, a high-level player and has the attention of a number of high-level programs. When Tennessee gets him back on campus at the end of the month, it's going to be make or break time. It's going to be they've got the visit that I think you want in this process right there, a few days away from the start of the early signing period. So it's going to be a push for these schools to try to land Dre Quinn's commitment, and Tennessee remains very much in the thick of it from everything that I've gathered lately.
Dre Quinn, 225, 6'3.5", Rivals industry ranking 366 at current standing. All right, so we talked about a couple of edge players. We talked about, of course, a decommitment for Tennessee. What's left in the 2026 class? What are some other names that fans should be on the lookout for? what's some movement we should expect from Tennessee in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, so I mean, again, Oklahoma weekend, Tennessee hosted a couple of guys, and Amari Latimer and Micah Smith, and much like other programs, Tennessee still awaiting final decisions from those guys. Going to be interesting with Amari Latimer to kind of see where things go there now. He's been committed to Wisconsin for some time. Wisconsin choosing to stay with Luke Fickell through this season and allowing him to come back next season, making that known publicly. So, what does that make things look like for Amari Latimer? And then Micah Smith's a guy that he really hasn't talked very much since early in his process. And he's remained in contact with a number of schools, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Ohio State, and then, of course, UCLA. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how these guys attack the final weeks of their process. Do they rush to try to get something done here in the month of November? Or does this drag on later into the month and into the start of that early signing period? Those are some of the things that we're continuing to track, and we'll continue to see where Tennessee looks to potentially add in this 2026 class as it continues to be clear they want to add up front on the defensive line. They would like to add another offensive lineman in Smith. Latimer's been a target that Darrell Sims has refused to give up on at the running back position, and they just continue to keep their options open. And we'll see if anybody shows up on campus this week, or if another name pops up on an official visit that last weekend of the month of November. It's a pretty exciting time to be following recruitment right now, because this time last year there wasn't nearly as much movement. There were some names out there. We were still following Tim Merritt, and we were following Jaden Perlotti, and we were following DeJuan Morris, but kind of at this point and in the closing weeks, Tennessee started to trend somewhat hard there for those guys. So we'll see if they're able to do that again.
Couple of weeks left before the early national signing period, and then when you get that in the hay in the barn, continuing to look at the 27 class, but you get into transfer portal talk. Sure, the portal's not officially open until January this year, but it as soon as the season's over, you're going to have all these graphics saying da-da-da, da-da-da, da-da-da. I want to thank everybody. That being said, I intend, I will enter the transfer portal. So that'll be another fun little side session here as we enter the month, or as we enter the new year for sure. But plenty of coverage.
It's going to be. I mean, we're talking transfer. We're talking high school signing period to kick off December. And then it's just going to be, you're going to see those announcements as teams start to close out the season, especially teams that aren't bowl eligible. You'll see even more, I think, from them initially, but there's like a 5-week break between the portal, the high school signing period ending and the portal. So it's going to be an interesting time for sure. And, what does it look like now that it's just a one-time window? Who goes in to see just what their options are and, what kind of leverage that they have. And that's going to be across the country. It's a very, very unique time.
Yeah. The month of December was atrocious for the last couple of years. Now the month of December is like, all right, get to signing day. And if you're in the playoff, focus on that. And you're kind of coasting with a lot of time for roster retention, end of the year meetings, all that, if you're out of the playoff. And, it's going to get a little bit hectic in January, but I thought the month of December was always so bad. And again, Crimea River college coaches make a lot of money. Some don't. Yep. There were some assistants that don't make that much money. Let's be real, but it's still just way too much. So I'm glad that calendar has kind of helped them out in that regard. But going to be fun. We'll have plenty of coverage. Matt and also have plenty of coverage right here at Volquest.com and on the Journal's Quarters. Appreciate you guys and gals for checking us out here. This is Tral Tidbits of Volquest.com, mini recruiting podcast with Matt Ray.